In section 11.1, now we're going to be solving quadratic equations using the square root property. So remember what a quadratic equation is. It's a degree 2 polynomial, and it can be written in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So I put a little refresher down here at the bottom, the ways that we're going to be doing this. Factoring, which we already did. And this one we're doing the square root property, and then later on we'll do completing the square in the quadratic formula. Okay, so for solving quadratics using this property, for the most part, the quadratics that we're going to be solving for this section are going to be in the form ax squared plus c equals 0, meaning they're missing the x term. If they're missing the x term, we can always solve them using this property. So what we're going to do is we're going to isolate the x squared term, and then we're going to take the square root of both sides to solve it for x. This will always result in a negative answer. So if we have x squared equals k, where k is the number, we take the square root of both sides, we're going to get x squared x equals the square root of k, and x equals negative square root of k. So you can write that as x equals plus or minus the square root of k also. So keep that in mind. We're always going to be getting positive and negative answer when we do it this way. Okay, let's do some examples here. So we have x squared equals 16. Okay, so what we're going to do is square root both sides. When we take the square root of both sides like this, the square root and the square will cancel each other. So we're going to be left with x on the left. And we're going to have the square root of 16, but like I just mentioned, we always get plus or minus. So it's going to be x equals plus or minus the square root of 16, which is plus or minus the square root of 16 is 4. So I'm just going to write this as a solution set and say that's going to be negative 4 and positive 4. Okay, so you can always go back, check your answers. If you plug in negative 4 back into here, negative 4 squared is positive 16, which is what we expected, and 4 squared is also positive 16. So that's why we get the negative number also, because when we go back and plug it in and we square it, it makes it positive. Okay, next one, 2x squared minus 8 equals 0. So first we have to isolate the x squared, and we have to do that by adding 8 to both sides first. So we get 2x squared equals 8. Now we're going to divide both sides by 2. We get x squared equals 8 over 2 is 4. Take the square root of both sides, we get the square root of x squared is x, and then we get plus or minus the square root of 4. So we get x equals plus or minus 2. So as a solution set, that's going to be negative 2 and positive 2. Okay, and then once again, you can plug it in if you want to check. Next one, 3x squared minus 15 equals 0. So first we have to add 15 to both sides. So 3x squared equals positive 15. Divide both sides by 3. So once again, all we're doing is isolating the x squared first. So 15 over 3 is just 5. So now we take the square root of both sides and we get plus or minus the square root of 5. So we can't simplify that at all, so we're just going to leave it like that. And our solution set is going to be negative square root of 5 and positive square root of 5. Okay, I'll do a couple more here. So 9x squared plus 25 equals 0. I'm actually going to change this to a negative right here, so minus 25. So 9x squared minus 25 equals 0. So first we're going to add 25 to both sides. So it's 9x squared equals 25. Divide both sides by 9. We get x squared equals 25 over 9. That does not simplify, so we're just going to take the square root of that. So x equals take the square root of both sides. X equals plus or minus the square root of 25 over 9. And we can simplify that now because we can take the square root of the numerator and denominator separately. The square root of 25 is 5. The square root of 9 is 3. So we get plus or minus 5/3. Okay, and then for the last one here, we have x minus 2 squared equals 6. So for this one, it doesn't look like the other ones that we just did. But since we have the whole left side, which is a binomial being squared, we can take the square root of both sides right away. Taking the square root of x minus 2 squared will cancel the squared. So we're going to be left with x minus 2. The square root of the right side will give us plus or minus the square root of 6. Okay, all we have to do now is add 2 to both sides. That gives us 2 plus or minus the square root of 6. And that actually cannot be simplified, so that's going to be the answer. So we get 2 minus radical 6 and 2 plus radical 6. So you can just leave it like that, or sometimes you might want to plug it in the calculator to get a decimal answer. But that is it for section 11.1.